There is a word for all of you. One word, collective word. Survivors. So you guys, I have been really impressed with your energy, your enthusiasm, and your stamina, because it seems like everybody's been cranking all weekend, going to stuff, not sleeping. I don't know about your sleep patterns, but it seems like everybody's really been great. So let me ask you this. What was your favorite thing that you went to this weekend? Anybody just put their hand up? So Kai, so the turntable thing, what else? Open mic, that was pretty, were there a lot of people last night at open mic? First night was packed, but what about you? What was your favorite thing? Cool. That's a great thing. This is the first time we've done that, and we had no idea how many people would be doing that, be interested in it. That worked out really well. DiViNCi. All right. What about? Okay. Okay, the Dr. B stuff, yeah. Who else? Unleashing the Beast. You know what? The thing is that we have a saying here at Berklee when you get a musician who's really playing super, super well. We say, okay, who let them out of the cage this morning? So we see this gentleman here gets out of the cage fairly often. Anybody else in the back? The concert. How many people were at the concert? Those are my homeboys. Those guys are really pretty smoking. One of the things that we do here at Berklee, even if we are in music technology, we play. Everybody comes to the school playing something, but when you're working with technology, I mean, that's what we do. So we figure out ways to play, and there's so many ways to do electronic music that it's really been great to have DiViNCi here, to have the faculty playing for you guys, and hopefully there's lots of models for you to go from. Speaking of models, one thing I want to show you. So people been asking, well, what do people do when they get out of here at Berklee, when they graduate? So I'm going to show you a gadget. Any ever see this? Do you know what it is? It's a mojo. So this was hand-built by somebody named Moldover. Has anybody heard of Moldover? Moldover reputedly is the godfather of controllerism. So when Moldover left Berklee, he moved to New York, and New York is fairly expensive, and so he had to kind of figure out how to pay his rent. So he's DJing. And so he's DJing with Ableton Live off his laptop. And what he found is that people had no idea what he was doing. They didn't know if he was doing his email or what, but he was just doing this music. But he was actually not just doing tracks, he was doing all sorts of performance stuff. So what he decided to do is to figure out how to build something that he could perform with. So he designed and built this thing called the Mojo. And there are touch strips here for 4 fingers. There's sliders. There's all sorts of ways to actually perform with this thing, the Mojo. And he made maybe 10 or 15 of these things, and we have one of them. But I think that's the kind of resourcefulness that we see from students who come out of the program, but that's the type of resourcefulness I think you're going to need to equip yourself with in your own ways as you go on and build a career from really the knowledge that you're getting here. So I think today the key is to really be thinking about careers. I think some of the sessions, how many went to Kareem's session about business? One of the things you probably learned from that session is if you're a DJ, don't sign up to do a 10 a.m. showcase. Yeah, so I think that the things that we're talking about today really are things that will help you think about framing a career. So now in doing this, we're going to invite DiViNCi back to the stage. And we're going to let him kind of cap it off with his perspective on this. And I think we've already heard some things already which have been really great. And I think one of the things that I've been inspired about is just the idea that DiViNci really built his career. He came from nowhere. He was not born on third base. He did not have a silver spoon in his mouth. He had to figure all this stuff out, which I think is really a useful perspective from any of us. And so there's a lot to be learned from that. So I'm going to turn this over to DiViNci. What we'll do is he'll talk for a little bit, but I don't know about you guys, but I've had a lot of questions over the weekend. So we had lunch yesterday, and we're going to actually continue the conversation that we had at lunch, as the kind of tail end of his presentation. And then we're going to invite you into the conversation as well. So we're going to end up today with a little bit of a family gathering where we can all talk about some of the stuff that we've been doing. And then afterwards, you get your certificates and you go back to your normally scheduled lives. So once again, give it up for DiViNci.
How you guys doing? Well. Well. Still well. Still well. Well is what? Fantastic. Well's fantastic. Good, 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 good. It's cool. I was actually going to ask. I was curious myself, like some things that stood out to you through the weekend, and that's really cool to hear all the different things that you guys did. I actually, what am I recording right now? I actually was popping in and out of some different workshops that were going on yesterday, and some really fun stuff going on. Dr. B is great. I just watched him like a TV show. It was really awesome. So, as the slide would suggest, today we're talking about how to unleash the beast in your career and beyond. And to talk about this, I want to kind of go back to the first thing that I've mentioned, which was identify, right? How important it is to identify what it is you want. When you identify what you want, you have an easier time of defining a trajectory to hit it. But something I didn't mention is it's fine if you don't know what you want. You just work with what you have. For me, when I started, what I wanted was I wanted to make music. Before that, I wanted to invent. When I found music, then I was like, oh, I want to invent within the realm of music. And music, to me, was introduced through the music business as much as it probably has been introduced to you. I mean, how many people heard music because it was playing on the radio or through iTunes or something first, right? Hands? Like you heard it by way of the business delivering it to you. And because of that, you kind of roll off of that and say, okay, well, I experienced music this way. I guess that's where I want to go. But that's not necessarily true. And it wasn't necessarily true for me that I found out, right? By show of hands, really quick again, how many people in here want to make a career that involves music? Most of you. Most of you. Can I see, just to see the difference, how many people are not interested in a career in music? Cool. That's good to know. You know, I didn't realize there was a difference. When I started learning about music, I thought, well, I want to do this as much as possible. And in order to do that, I have to make a career of it so that this is what I can do every single second. But I went on in my journey thinking that those two things were the same thing, music and music business. They're completely not. Your want, your compulsion, your impulse to make music and be a creator is very, very separate, most often, from being successful in music business. I thought, well, I practice at making music, I get better at music, my career will naturally follow. To me now, I don't know how this sounds to you, but to me now, it's absurd. You don't just get better at music and then you have a career from it. You practice what you practice and you get better at what you put the practice into. And if you're practicing getting better at music, you will certainly get better at music. It's just the way it works. But it doesn't necessarily mean that your career will flourish because of it. My career did flourish in ways that I hadn't expected. But I don't think it was because I was diligently pursuing one or the other. I thought they were the same. And I kind of realized later that had I treated them a little differently, I would have gotten a lot further, a lot quicker than I had. So it's really important to understand and differentiate between the voice in you that says, I want to create, and the one that says, I want to share my creations, and the one that says, I want to make money off of sharing my creations. These are very separate paths with very distinct and sometimes subtle differences in what you practice between them. How many people here are, now I'm going to rephrase the question. How many people here are really interested in the art form of music business? Okay, interesting. A lot less hands than the people that want to make a career out of it. What does that mean? That means the people that aren't necessarily interested in the music business, but are still interested in having a career in music, well, they need to do a couple different things than the people that are interested in the music business. Build a team. Find people who are artists in the business. This is something I didn't do because, A, I had a hard time finding the people that I thought could manage what I wanted to do well. And B, I thought, well, anything I've tried, I've been able to figure out and do. I learned how to build my website. I learned how to manage myself. My group, we learned how to book ourselves. We learned how to do these things. And whenever we had people come in, even when we got signed to the record label, we were like, we're going to outsell the record label. Like, we're not going to slow down. We've been hustling CDs and albums on the street. We want to show them, the label, that just because you signed us doesn't mean we're going to back off. We're going to go even harder, and we're going to outsell all of you. And we did, a little too easily. We sold more albums, I think, than the actual label did. Which, after doing it, was kind of like a bittersweet victory, like, yay. That just means that with our power amongst us versus the power amongst a label that's been doing it for a really long time, we worked harder, you know? With less resources, we worked harder, and we got better results. It's interesting, the dynamic of knowing that you can do something versus doing it or not. Just because you can do something doesn't mean you ought to do it. It depends, again, if you want to do it, right? So it's good to understand the people who don't want to be involved in the business side of things. You're going to need people who are if you're going to flourish in a career, right? Now, you could get lucky, and you could just kind of go off and start creating and just have your head down and do that. But I don't like luck. I don't like hope. I like to be able to work and practice and get results from that, right? So what I want to share with you today are some of the things that help you to do that and help you identify what you want to do every step of the way, because what you think you want to do now may change. So how to check in with yourself as you progress on your journey. And how to differentiate between the impulses you have and the work that you wind up doing, right? For me, I really had this particular vision of I wanted to be, you know, the youngest hip-hop producer at the time that had ever come out. I wanted to be really big. I wanted to be able to play every instrument. I wanted to be innovative. I didn't know how, though. Like all these things, I really didn't know how that was going to happen. All I had, right, was a passion for music, for hip-hop culture. I had a passion for what I was doing. And that was pretty much it. I didn't have much else. What that brought me just following that was years and years later, I got everything that I ever thought I wanted when I first created my goals, and then some, including the clarity of how those things were achieved. So really, it just was something I loved as a kid to do. I loved to make beats. Liken that to like playing with, I don't know, anyone play with action figures growing up? Like what?
All the Marvel characters.
Marvel characters.
Lord of the Rings characters.
Lord of the Rings characters.
Transformers.
Transformers. Star Wars.
Bionicles.
Bionicles. Okay, that one got applause. I'll use Bionicles. It seems to be a crowd favorite. I've never heard of them. I was going to go with Transformers because they've been around before I was born. But Bionicles it is. Imagine you love playing with Bionicles or Barbie or whatever. Me just following my passion for that brought me all around the world. It brought me to stages in front of thousands and thousands of people. I think like the most people I've ever played in front of were like 60,000 people. Yeah, it was my first show with Miss Hill, with Lauryn Hill, where it was like a week before. I was like getting off of a plane from my tour in France with my group, and I got a call from her manager. Hey, I work for Miss Lauryn Hill now, and I want you to come out here and blah, blah. And I said, yes. He didn't even finish. I said, yes. And I didn't even catch my plane back home because it was in Philadelphia where we were connecting. I just had my parents pick me up because they live in Pennsylvania and take me to Jersey. And then I sent for my gear to be sent. And then less than a week later, I was in front of 60,000 people, opening at the LA Coliseum, opening with Miss Lauryn Hill, opening for Muse and Rage Against the Machine. It's pretty cool. It was pretty cool. More on that in a bit. So things like that happened, right? I found out how I was going to innovate because, like I said, I wanted to be able to play every single instrument. But I didn't have every single instrument, nor did I have the teaching for it, right? I didn't have someone to teach me all those different things. So I did have a love for hip-hop, and I followed that, and that brought me to the drum machine. And through these, I kind of can play every instrument. You know, it's a bit of a roundabout way, but it's really cool because I can, if you close your eyes, I can play any instrument you ask me to, and you'll hear it. And I also don't have to lug all the different instruments around, too. This is really cool, too. And through doing that, I found out how I was going to innovate, right? Was by kind of building my own future through this. Again, when I was doing this, I didn't see anybody else doing this. I'm not saying it wasn't being done, but this wasn't a thing when I started. Now it is, and that's really cool. And because of that, my original want to inspire people actually turned into inspiring people that inspired me. There's musicians and things like that that I work with, and they're like blown away by what I do and asking me questions, and I'm like, what are you talking about? You got all the answers for me. They're like, no, you got some answers too. So all these goals were superseded by just following every single step of the way and checking in with what I want, following what I want. So again, it's like, I just loved doing what I did. And because of that, you know, again, it was like playing with Bionicles. I loved doing it. And I did it enough that 10 years later, found myself in front of 60,000 people playing with Bionicles on stage with one of my heroes, and people seeing me play with Bionicles and being like, yeah, yeah. Like that's what it's like, playing with Bionicles, and then years later getting to go around the world in front of thousands of people to cheer you on playing with Bionicles. And then walking off stage and getting paid for it. Pretty cool. Very, very attractive goals, right? But what's it take? What's it take? It takes loving what you do, right? Knowing what you do, but loving what you do too. And the reason why I say love the practice, again, I'm talking about my first language, which is martial arts. I learned this from that, which is, this isn't something you master. You're not concerned with results. This is something that you practice forever because you love practicing it. And when you do that, when you're driven by your love for doing it and nothing else, what's that create for you? Fulfillment. Yes, that's correct. Fulfillment. To me, it also creates the foundation for success, right? When you love practice, it creates sustainability. Sustainability is super, super important, right? It's the foundation for success. It's what I hope you build everything that you do on, is sustainability. You've heard before that being successful in this business, it's not a race, it's a marathon. That's true. Bless you. It's not about keeping your eye on a prize and then just going for that prize, because again, that's being concerned with results. That's not as sustainable as just loving the technique that gets you those results, right? I like to think of this. Has anyone, you mentioned Marvel, has anyone seen Doctor Strange? I'm going to give a spoiler alert. Is that all right? Does anyone have a problem if I spoil the ending of Doctor Strange really quick? Raise your hand. I want to respect spoiler alerts. Okay, so Doctor Strange, if you guys remember, at the end, yes. How did he beat Dormammu? He came up to him, he said, Dormammu, I've come to bargain, right? And Dormammu's like, get out of here, and he smashes him. He's dead. But then all of a sudden it repeats, Dormammu, I've come to bargain. He kills him again. He keeps smashing him down. Eventually, Dormammu's like, wait a second, haven't I done this before? I have deja vu. Why is this repeating? Dr. Strange is like, well, I looped time until you bargain with me. He's like, okay, cool. I can do this all forever. And he's like, good. Dies. Dormammu, I've come to bargain. Dormammu, I've come to bargain. The funny thing is, I read about that, and in the movie it's like maybe less than 10 minutes. But the writers say that might have gone on for years, actually, which is why he was able to really master all this stuff before Infinity War happened, right? But now I'm thinking about Infinity War. Okay? Shouldn't have said Marvel, man. Whew. All right. But eventually he's like, stop this. Dormammu's like, stop this. You're dead. Just be dead. And he's like, no. He's like, you can win all you want because I'm going to lose forever. And when he said that, I was like, yes, he gets it. They get it. Because if you're in a race, if you're in a competition or something, not to say this is a competition, but if you're in something to win it, but you're only in it to win it. You're not going to win as hard as a guy who's in it because he loves doing it, because he loves practicing it. And knowing that by practicing something, it means that you make as many failures as possible. Because when I'm training martial arts, I'm not just trying to look good and understand these moves. As soon as I learn a move and I can block this punch and that punch, I'm asking that person to hit me a different way. I want that person or myself to find my weakness. I want to be hit. I want to get hit. I want to get hit because that's the only way I can train all the possible ways to block it. If I just get good at one way of winning, something's going to happen in a self-defense situation that I can't plan for, and I'm inevitably going to lose. But if I invite loss, if I invite the failure, if I collect them like they're Pokemon, right? Well, then I win. And I win harder than the guy who's just concerned with winning. You don't want to fight the guy who loves to lose, do you? Because he's really good at it. So good that he's going to win harder than anyone that's concerned with winning. So take a tip from Dr. Strange. Just be willing to lose forever, and you're going to win harder than anybody else. As long as you're not focused on that. And that's where sustainability comes in. Because sustainability creates consistency, right? How many people look at some music out there and they're like, man, this is ridiculous. How did they get a record deal? Or how are they famous? Show of hands. Anybody question that? Somebody mentioned Kanye West? No, I'm saying, like somebody, I just heard a name, they said Kanye West. I don't want to invite a debate here. But why do you like Kanye West?
Because he's different.
Because he's different? He put Poopity Scoop in a song, but that was after he's wildly famous. I don't think it's the music that you necessarily like about Kanye West. I think the thing that you like about Kanye West, if you like Kanye West, is the fact that he's unapologetic about his ambitious self. He's super ambitious. Let me tell you something about me. Can you guys hum the melody of any of the songs that I played this weekend? You can? No. I'm joking. Well, right. But you can't right now. So I win. No, you can't do that because my music isn't what stands out for me. It's not. My music's cool, but I don't think that my music is what makes you enjoy what I do. I think you like what I do because when I get up here and I do this, I'm free. And you like seeing people be free. Whether you dislike them or like them, it stands out to you because that's what we all want to feel, right? You want to see somebody do what you'd like to do, right? That's why when I make music, I'm not making music for you to dance to. I'm making music for me to dance to because my dance is a dance of freedom. And if I can dance freely in front of you, as silly as it looks, well then I've done the best possible thing I could in front of you. That supersedes how catchy my melody is, how good the beat is, or anything. How well I played. I know I'm not the best. I know my music's not the best. But I know that no one is going to get up here in the way that I do and be free in the way that I am. I'm the best at that, and that is my voice. I'm the best at my voice, and I figured it out. So I'm confident, whether you hate or love what I'm doing, it's making some sort of connection with you. And that's why people like Kanye West, because he's super, super ambitious. I don't necessarily think that his execution is as skilled as his ambition is big, but he doesn't care. and he consistently goes out in front of you and does whatever, poopity scoop, whatever, you know? And people love it. Whether they love or hate it, they love to hate it, they love it, whatever, it doesn't matter, they love it because everyone talks about it constantly. I'm not convinced you don't like it if you're talking about it so much because you're spending your energy on it. But you're spending your energy on it because it resonates with you in some sort of way, and it's because this person's consistently tapping into a thing that you'd like to be, which is executing on their ambition, whether good or bad, unapologetically in front of you. So that's why I say consistency is key. Consistency is that part that Dr. Strange was able to do that eventually made him win. And that's why people are out there that you think don't deserve it winning, because they're just not stopping at doing what they're doing. There's people out there that I'm like, are you serious? But I get it because they just are not stopping. They're not getting in their own way. And really, when you have sustainability, you automatically have consistency, and then you have success. Success isn't necessarily what to focus on. If you redefine success and reframe it for yourself as just making it sustainable, well then whatever your vision of success is will automatically come because you'll consistently do it. Does that make sense to everyone? That's your best bet, right? You can sit at home trying to create the perfect song, the winning lottery ticket. Or you could focus on what allows you to make enough money to buy 100 million lottery tickets, right? Consistency. I put my money on the person just concerned with getting as many lottery tickets as they can, not concerned with trying to figure out what the winning one is, right? Consistency, which rests on sustainability and creates success. So, to go back to identify, remember, it's really important to understand why you're doing this and what you're doing it for, because it's your best bet. Here's the byproduct of that. Even if you don't win, you still win. Because if you're just focused on enjoying the process and loving the practice, well then you win every single day whenever you just do it. So when you inevitably see positive results from that, you get bonus points. You win on top of winning every day. And when you see negative results from it, you're like, that's awesome. Now I know a new way to train and not get hit by a punch. So whether you lose, you win, or you see no results, you win each time. Win, 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 right? Because you're loving what you do. Some people say enjoy the journey, not the destination. That's what they're talking about. But this is how you do it. Sustainability, then consistency, and then whatever results come from that, it's all a success, right? So, what is success? I know some of you probably have answers to this. What do you guys think success is? Being happy in what you do. That's a great goal. Fantastic goal. That did it? Yeah. Being happy in what you do. What makes you happy? That's different for each of you, right? So success is a relative term. It's not something finite. The dynamic is finite, enjoying what you do, but what you do changes from person to person. Now, with all the, yes? Lack of fear. Not being in the way of yourself on your journey to whatever you're trying to get, right? Fear, doubt, all these things that from impulse to action deviate from here to there. From impulse to action, you want what? Straight line, immediate, You want to feel something, and it manifests. You can't do that when you're in your own way. Right? So, how do you properly define these things? Well, you practice, right? You practice trusting yourself. You practice following what you want, which helps you to trust yourself. But all these things are helping you to what? Develop your own voice. Right? But that's something that's kind of been memeified. You know, like follow your truth path, like follow your own voice, share your own voice. But the thing that I'm always concerned with is, yeah, these memes are very inspirational. They resonate with something really cool. But they don't tell you how. So you're left with like, yeah, Instagram, like, boom, go on. Go about your day. Follow my voice. Well, how do you know how to do that, right? So, I broke it down into 3 steps. Developing your voice, right? These are dynamics that we share here that you're going to have to like treat like equations. X plus Y equals Z. You're going to have to put U in place of X plus whatever your Y is, and that's going to equal your Z, whatever that vision of success is for you. So these are dynamics that you got to practice getting good at, and then when you're good at using these, you'll be able to then define what it means for you, okay? So the first step, again, identify. Now this is different context of what I was talking about before. Identify your voice. You don't necessarily have to understand what that voice is saying. You just have to be able to hear it. This is tricky. There's a lot of noise in the world. There's a ton of noise. And they're really prominent. And the more people that are saying the same thing, the more it's difficult to differentiate what that is from what you're saying, right? So the first step is to identify your voice. If there's all this noise going on, you have to hear what your voice sounds like. You don't have to hear what it's saying, just hear what your voice sounds like. And that takes patience with yourself and giving yourself the credit that you can make decisions. So making decisions helps you identify. Because while this noise is going on, you're going to hear stuff like, and you're going to hear, and all this stuff, right? So you need to be able to take all those faders down. And one by one, bring one fader up and solo it. And be like, all right, this one's saying this. Does that feel right? No. This one sounds like this. Does that feel like me? Who I am? No. This one's like this. Well, that kind of feels like it. But I have some conflict over it too. And you just kind of isolate each one. Until you find the one that feels most like you, and you decide, yes, I'm going to follow this one. And then you mix around that, right? Bring that voice up, and then mix all these other things that are inevitably going to be making noise around that. So that's the focal point. Just identify your voice, because that's what I'm teaching you here, what I'm sharing with you is stuff that I think that there should be taught in kindergarten. But it's not. It would be in everyone's best interest if this was taught in kindergarten, or even before school, preschool, whatever. But what is taught? We're taught so many other things. We're taught how to identify what's outside before we identify what's inside. And when you go out in, the results aren't as favorable as when you go in out. You know? So, identify first. Now, once you hear that voice, and you're like, okay, that sounds like me, then you have to be able to discern that voice from all the other noise that's happening, right? You have to understand the difference between what your intuition, because this is all your intuitive voice, really. This is 3 steps also just to understanding your intuition, developing your intuitive voice. Once you discern that, or once you identify it, then you can start to discern it. And you can say, you know what, this is great. I can kind of tell what this is saying. And I see how it lines up with what they're saying and what's being promoted to me constantly through advertising, through example, through my parents, through my older siblings, through my younger peers, through everything. How does mine relate to these things? How does it differ? How is it the same? It's important. It seems like it's part of the first step, but it's a step further, right? Because identifying is just hearing, right? So, if I were to take a video of everyone just yelling right now, okay? Let's do it. Yes, yes, yes. Let's do it. All right? It's fine. Why not? It's the last day. It doesn't have to be loud, though. It doesn't have to be loud. Just everyone yell or exclaim or do anything. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Ah! Yeah, 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 yeah. Okay, okay, okay. Now, I've been hearing your voice all weekend, but I couldn't hear your voice when that happened. And that's exactly what's going on now. In every single moment, there's empathetic energy influencing you a certain way. There's things being promoted influencing you a certain way. There's a ton of things out there influencing you in every which way, and it's so noisy that you're not going to be able to hear yours unless you practice. You got to practice, identify, and discern. Practice those things. Once you do that, you got to then learn how to interpret it. When you get to the step of interpreting what your voice is saying, that's a good place to be. Because, yes, hearing is awesome. Being able to discern between what yours is saying and what others are saying is great. But being able to manifest this impulse or this intuition into the action that properly represents that is tough, because we have these within us, these questions, these self-questions. We question ourselves constantly, and that creates deviation from impulse to action. And we practice. We're really good at doing this. And all I want you to try to focus on is being good at, practicing, rather, doing this. And it's going to take a lot of failures. What I mean by interpret, has anyone ever played like Whisper Down the Alley, or they call it Chinese telephone, like you whisper something into his ear and then they whisper, and then by the end of it, you know, orange turns into crispy cornflakes or something, you know? That's kind of what's happening in a lot of us right now. Our intuitive voice is saying something, and we haven't had a lot of practice listening to it, discerning it from others, and interpreting it. So, by the time it comes out, our impulse to follow music turns into us being an accountant. How's that happen? Well, you felt good about wanting to do music. Music made you feel good. You never really checked in with yourself along your journey, and you started following a path in music that wasn't necessarily yours, but was advertised to you, promoted to you as being the way to go. And all along, you kind of didn't feel like where you were going was necessarily for you, but because you thought that was your only option, because that's what's promoted the most, then you just kept on doing it. And little by little, because you weren't properly interpreting your intuitive voice of where to go, not only did you chip away at your love for this, you kind of buried it with all this regret and all these other things that happen. And simultaneously, because you didn't always check in and readjust, your trajectory from where this started to where you started is all the way over here. And then at that point, you say, you know what, maybe my parents or maybe this person was right. I should have just did something that was safe. And then you're kind of go to being an accountant or something, you know? Not, hey, accountant's fine. if you want to do that. So, it's funny, I actually passed my accounting final in school by making a song about accounting. She let me do that. I just remember that. I made a rap about accounting, and she exempted me from the final. Cool teacher. So what I'm saying is, if you don't practice these things, you can find yourself in a place where you don't necessarily want to be as much as this other place. And it takes practice. It takes practice listening to yourself, right? Does that make sense to everyone? Is it confusing at all? Does it make you feel like, okay, cool, but how? I mean, a little bit? Yeah. Well, this isn't not something that you can just know here. This is something that you have to know here. And that's why I say it takes practice. It's going to take practice. Now, who here thinks it's good to question themselves? Think about it. Think about it first. Put your hands down. Think about it for a second. Are there any instances where it's good to question yourself? If it's a yes, raise your hand. If it's a no, raise your hand. You know the answer. Okay, most people said yes. Just like I wanted you to replace should with want, I want you to consider that it's never good to question yourself. Never. There's never an instance where it's good to question yourself. This is one of the hows on how you begin to put these steps into action, because it takes trusting yourself. And this is the foundation for trusting yourself. Never, ever question yourself. Who has an argument about that? I'm sorry, could you say that again? If you feel like killing yourself, you should probably question that. That is a good one. Nope, don't question it. Please don't stop there. Follow me on this. Okay? Never question yourself. Always check in with yourself. Okay? There's a difference. Yeah, there's a difference. And that's not, I'm not like, no. There's a big difference. Just like there's a big difference between should and want, there's a big difference. Right? And I'm glad you said that. Because I actually have family members who talk about this all the time, killing themselves and stuff like that, and friends. And I invite them to say, but is that what you really want? And when I've walked them through it, it's not. It's what they think is the answer, but they don't know that that's the answer. You don't know what happens when you do that. Really, the reason why you want to do that is because you want escape from whatever pain you're currently in. But we don't know that that is escape. Who knows what happens? Something worse could be on the other end of that. It could make it worse. You have no idea. But what we do know is that there's other ways to escape pain. Now, every situation is different, and I know this is like a sensitive topic, but I'm going to approach it because it's important. I think that people don't really want to kill themselves. They'd rather kill who they are or the current state that they're in, right? If you had a choice, wouldn't that be, if you thought that that was possible, wouldn't that be the way you went, right? What if you could just be different? Well, you can. What if you could just change your situation? Well, you always can. Sometimes it takes help from other people. And I invite you, if anyone's not clear on this, please come talk to me. I get my business card. We'll talk. I've talked to one of you one-on-one, whether here or outside or back when I'm back in Orlando. If you need clearing up on this, let me clear it up. Because there's never a place to question yourself. Question yourself means a lot of different things. Am I doing the right thing? Am I good enough? Do I have what it takes? Is this right? Am I wrong? This blah, blah, blah. All these different questions, right? And you think to question yourself's good because it's going to keep you in check. But you forget keeping you in check is actually checking in with yourself. Checking in with yourself is one question. One question. And it's not questioning yourself. It's saying, now that I'm standing here, what do I want now? That's the only question, and it's the only question you'd ever ask yourself that's going to help you get further, right? This is important to remember. Now that I'm standing here, what do I want now? I sandwich it between now. Now that I'm standing here, what do I want now? Because it's forcing you and tricking you to stay in the moment. What do I want? Well, I don't want to hurt myself. I want escape from this. And when you start to answer those questions more accurately, then you start to seek out answers that are more beneficial towards your goal. And the reason why I always say, now that I'm standing here, what do I want now? Because you can't make the same assumption of where you're at when you were standing here versus when you're standing here. Here, you might have been really depressed and questioning yourself and this, that, the other thing. And the only thing that you wanted and could stand to think to be was just out of this place. And let's say something happened and it influenced your mood, and then you're out of that place 5 minutes later, a year later. You can't still operate with the same goal that you had while you were standing here, which is, I just want to be out of this place. Well, you're out of that place. How does that relate to where you are now? Because now that you're standing here, you might want different things. You might want better than just being out of pain, right? So try it. Try it out. And don't be afraid of your answer. Don't be afraid of what your answer is. Now that I'm standing here, what do I want now? Honestly, look at it. And look at it logically, emotionally, and intuitively. Look at it in all these ways and answer it and come up and ask other people to help. But understand that your voice might be different from what the answers they give. Check in with yourself, right? Always check in with yourself every moment. Right here, right here, right here, right here, every single moment. And let yourself have goals that change. Don't worry if it makes you look like flighty or flip-floppy. If 5 minutes from now you want something completely different from what you wanted 5 minutes earlier, that's fine. It just means that you're getting better and better at hearing your intuitive voice and following it. And what you thought was crispy cornflakes actually sounded more like door hinge. And when you go further and you say, well, what does that sound like now? Oh, it's orange. I found a word it's not a word. I found something that rhymed with orange. They say that that's the only word that doesn't have a rhyme. What? There's three more? I don't care. We'll talk about that. But does that make sense? Does that make sense? To check in with yourself versus questioning yourself? And so some of you might be like, well, that's the same thing. It's not. You have a compulsion. Everyone's compulsion to question themselves is right. They just interpreted it as question yourself. But that's not actually what it was saying. Your intention, your intuition, your voice was always saying, check in with yourself. What you think and what you want matters. Check in with yourself. But because everyone else defines that as questioning themselves, well, then that's what kind of it sounds like, right? So you interpret it in a way that is a little different from what your intuition is telling you. Your intuition is telling you check in with yourself, but everyone's actions promoting that questioning yourself is how to interpret that intuition. It's different. It's slightly different, and it's really important to understand the difference because the difference can save your life, literally, right? So check in with yourself. If you need practice with that, again, let me know because there's only so much I can get through here, right? But does that make sense to everyone? Yes? Does anyone have any questions about that? Well, if you do, let me know. These are things that are really important because they're going to help you define what you want every step of the way, and understand and practice the techniques that help you to get better at doing that. Yes?
When did you stop questioning yourself and start checking in with yourself? How long did that take?
He asked, when did I stop questioning myself and start checking in with myself, and how long did that take? I can't answer that. Not that way.
Sure.
Let me rephrase in a way that I can answer it. When did I start consciously practicing checking in with myself over questioning myself? Because I still question myself. Tomorrow I turn 36 years old, right? The majority of that life, I've had a lot of practice questioning myself. A lot of practice. When I bring people in who are into my martial arts thing and I start teaching them, they might have learned to punch this way or that way. And the way I want to teach them is different. Not necessarily better or whatever, but if they want to learn what I'm teaching, I have to teach them something different. It's a lot harder to teach someone that already knows how to do it because they've practiced a different way so many times than it is somebody that has no experience doing it. So I've had 30 years of practice or so of questioning myself. And not just practice, but seeing other people do it in front of me. People that I look up to, my parents, everyone. Everyone does it. The world does it, and the world promotes to you to do it. So I like to think of it that I've always been practicing. You know? Consciously, though, maybe 3 years ago. 3 or 4 years ago, something like that, where I started to realize that there was a difference. But then once I realized that, I kind of like retroactively changed my outlook on how things were. It's like a retcon, you know, in a movie where, you know, like, you ever see Iron Man 2? And they got, here we are again, Marvel. And they got Spider-Man, or they got like the little kid with the Iron Man hat on, and he goes to shoot one of the drones, and then Iron Man comes up behind him, he's like, poof! He's like, good work, kid. Well, that kid, later they said that was Spider-Man when he was a kid, you know? That's called a retcon, retroactive consistency. So they change things to like kind of make it work in the story. You know, they add new information that makes it work in the story. And that's what I'm constantly doing. I'm not lying to myself. I'm just realizing that from this year to this year, I was actually misinterpreting what my intuitive voice was saying. Because that's the rub. Like, you're never wrong. You just might not have practice in interpreting how right you are. Does that make sense? I mean, that just came out. I didn't really think that through. But that's what really makes sense to me, is the fact that what you feel is right. That's the problem. Because you feel a certain way. And people will say that that way is wrong. I'm not saying that that way is wrong. I'm just saying that you might be incorrectly interpreting the right thing that's being said from inside. That's key. And that's why arguments happen and they persist, is because people be like, no, I feel this. And people be like, no, that's wrong. You're wrong. No, you're not. You're totally right. But are you interpreting the right thing being said inside of you as orange? You know, are you interpreting it in a way that makes sense to the person hearing it, or even to yourself? That takes practice. So, you know, it's been in the last, 3 or 4 years or something like that, that I started realizing that there was a difference. And then practicing that, you know, I've said should in this conversation. I've said it, but then I repeat it. And then I say, it'd be my best interest. I consciously do that. Like, I've said should in this talk today, and then the very next sentence, I repeated the whole sentence, and I said it would be in my best interest to do it, right? It's like when I try to learn key commands on a computer. I'll look in the menu if I forget, and I'll click on it and be like, no. Then I'll undo it and then use the key command instead, right? That's how I practice it. And you got to be patient with yourself, because it takes time. It took me 30 years to become as good of a self-questioner, as good as a self-beater-upper as I have. I'm really good at it, super good at it. But because I'm really good at it, it's not a bad thing. Anything that you consider you're bad at, you're not. You're just really good at doing that thing that you may not want to be doing. That's it. So when you realize that, you just switch what you're practicing. But then don't regret the thing that you got good at that you don't want to be doing, because now I've become a really great opponent for myself. When I'm testing these ideas against serious issues, you know, like really serious issues, showstoppers, death, suicide, depression, stuff I could go on and on about. I've had so much practice in these dark places that there's a part of me who's a master at the dark arts. And when I session these things against myself, I know if I can make the light one win, well, then he's going to win against most other opponents, because that dark artist is really good. He's there for a reason. That's the trick. You can't regret anything that's happening. It's all happening as a gift. Every single thing that you're given is a gift. Whether you unwrap it, that's up to you. Right? So, some things to remember. Identify. Okay? Really important. Ask yourself questions. And if you don't know the answer, be easy on yourself. It's fine that you don't right now. It's really, you'll figure it out. The only thing that you got to do when you don't know the answer is reassure yourself that you have enough that you will figure it out. And work with what you have now to be able to figure it out. And when you really don't know, appreciate your ignorance. Your ignorance is super valuable, right? And in doing so, you start to collect failures. When you collect failures, there's less of them out there to collect. It's true. It becomes hard to find ways to mess up when you've done so many of them. But keep going out there and looking for them. This is important. Replace should with want. Right? Replace should with want. I've gone into that. Please. When you're out of the flow, both in life, creatively, whatever, recognize and have the reflex that you're out of the flow because you're in your head. How do you get out of your head? Get into your body. Sometimes it's as simple as taking a walk. Sometimes it's the free your fingers, free your mind technique. Sometimes it's running around. Sometimes it's taking a shower. Sometimes it's just breathing, meditating, whatever. When I had students in my martial arts class, and I'd be doing this with them, and then they'd start to slow down, I found that what I call the DiViNCi shake works for them. Is I literally have them go like this. Everyone do that really quick, please. Please, just everyone do it. Everyone. Thanks. Thanks. What that's doing is it's like having a really full cup and then just like shaking it and like making some space inside your head, right? But it's actually physiologically like engaging other parts of your body and breaking the focus that you have stuck in your head. I do that. Sometimes when I'm stuck in front of the computer, I'll be like, you know? Seriously. There's a ton of ways to get out of your head and into your body, right? Success, don't worry about success. Worry about sustainability. Because sustainability and consistency are equally linked. And that's really the only thing that you need to be successful at whatever you're trying to be successful at. And then practice identifying, discerning, and interpreting your own voice. You want to take a picture of that? You guys can take a picture of that. Practice that. Even if it sounds like crap, you know, like if it's not something you believe, try it out. You know? You might find something that's beneficial. And you know what? You might find that this doesn't work for you. That's fine too, because the dynamics that I'm discussing are something that will help you find the thing that does. This is stuff I'm sharing, but I'm sharing ultimately how can you do this and find your own voice. So to just blindly follow what I'm talking about goes against that. All I'm saying is some of these things work for me. All these things work for me. And I've seen it work for a lot of other people. And I've helped walk a lot of people through it. And every time I've seen it work. It could work. It's a way. It's not the way. Okay? So these are the things. Now, I know this is about career and beyond, but the specifics are just the variables in the equation. I want to give you the equation. Thank you, guys.
Okay, great. So we're going to finish up today with a couple things. We're going to have a bit of a conversation. And I think, this weekend, a lot of what DiViNCi has been talking about is really kind of like the big picture. Things that the equation, really the stuff that you're going to take out of here and hopefully you're going to process. But what I want to do today to finish up is to really talk a little bit about some of the things, tying this back to music, tying this back to some of the bigger pictures that you're probably thinking about after like going through all these workshops and hearing about all these crazy techniques and stuff. So I think maybe what we'll do is we'll do a practice here on how do we think about these big concepts in these practical issues that everybody's facing down. So one of the things that's really struck me about the things that you're talking about here is making decisions. And so we talked a bit about the idea of an instrument. And for most of us, let's say we have a piano. A piano is a thing that really has been around for a while. And everybody who plays the piano has their own voice. Part of that voice is really who they are, but it's really framed by this instrument that never changes. Piano doesn't change. It's the same thing all the time. So now when you have an electronic instrument, you have your instrument here. There's some things that don't necessarily change. So you can have somebody with the exact same controllers, exact same computer, and they're going to be completely different from you. And the reason probably I would guess is the things that you choose as your sounds. And with a computer and the way we can work with any sound in the world, anything. So how do you choose what sounds you're going to use?
That's an interesting question because when I started, as far as sampling things, all I had was a single crate of my father's of records, right? Ones that he wasn't able to sell at a yard sale, all the ones left over. And that meant that these weren't necessarily good ones. These weren't necessarily good records. So I just knew the dynamic that you sample records when you're making hip-hop music. And again, I don't consider what I make today hip-hop music necessarily in sound, but when I started, that's what I was making. And because of my ignorance and thinking, okay, this is all about forcing something from one thing to another, it didn't matter to me. I'd sample all of it. And the worst sounds, like it became more of a challenge for me to turn like a bad sound into a good sound. So as long as it was like an isolated sound, it stood out to me. That's why I would sample it. It even got to a point where if I came across something that would sound really good as a loop, I totally stayed away from it because I felt like, that's too easy. And that's back when I thought it was all about the challenge and not making music. It was like all about the process and the challenge. I have different thoughts now. If it's easy or if it's hard, it doesn't really matter. But I still have the tendency to think about these sounds that stand out to me. How they stand out to me now is different, right? It's not just if they're isolated. It's just if it makes me think or feel anything. We actually made this slideshow on the way here because I was kind of like thinking about the weekend. And while we were driving here from the hotel, Nick Give it up for Nick, by the way. He's been super helpful behind the scenes. My assistant Nick and I were in the car. My daughter and my wife were in the back, and he had his laptop on his lap, and he was just like interpreting what I was saying so that we could make a slideshow, and that's the slideshow here. And did you guys see the sustainability, consistency, success thing? You see the success thing? It was like firework animation. Yeah, it made me laugh. So I was like, keep it. You know what I mean? Because at first I was like, no, just make them fall on top of each other. But then he's like, what about this? And I busted out laughing because I saw this firework thing. And I was like, well, I can't argue that because it made me laugh. So anything that like just kind of stands out to me, it doesn't necessarily have to be good or bad. If it just peaks out, then I'll take it and see where it goes from there. I've gone into this place producing music where it's really just a stream of consciousness, and I let stuff play, and then whatever happens, like I'll try to like grab it and run with it. Take it as far as I can, and when I can't take it any further, I try to stop forcing myself to take it further, which is what I used to do. And now just like move on to the next thing that kind of like just low-hanging fruit, you know, like grab whatever's easiest and see what happens when I do that, because I spent my whole life as a creator reaching for the hard stuff. Now I don't feel like I need to prove anything to myself at this point.
So maybe digging down a little further, just a little bit more specific. So when you're putting together your kit, are you looking, saying, is there a certain set of categories? So I need drum sounds, I need bass sounds, I need kick sounds. And when you're thinking about that, what are the building blocks? Where do you start with your voice? Does it start with you putting together drum sounds, saying, yeah, this is my set right now, this is the rhythmic voice I have, and then do you build up there?
Are you talking about in a performance context?
Well, that's another question. So you have an Ableton Live set here, so that's probably different than what you use with Lauryn Hill. What do you have a set that you just, this is my axe and this is my voice right now, or do you put together a specific set of sounds for particular things?
This set, man. So
if this set could talk.
No, it would not shut up. So this set is actually, I work with a lot of different groups. I do one-off shows with other people and stuff like that. I just constantly add to one set. So like this set has everything that I'd perform with Soliloquist, has everything I'd perform as a solo person, has whatever I'd perform with Miss Hill. All these things, it's all in this one set. Because I'm kind of like, I like to build on top now, because I used to have to like, the way the technology worked, I didn't have room to do that. So I'd have to like start from scratch with everything that I was doing. But if I like spent a week or two programming this drums kit to sound live, I want to be able to reuse that and not have to rebuild it at some point. So when I do something with my group Chakra Khan and it turns out really good, next time I do something with Soliloquist Sound, I try that same sound out and I'm like, oh, okay, cool, that works too. So that, to answer that part of the question, the thing just keeps growing. And when things become less used, that's when I say, okay, let's get rid of this and maybe replace it with something else. And that goes back to like kind of checking in with yourself. Is this still relevant to what I'm doing? As far as the types of sounds and what I start with, it starts with the songs that kind of move me the most out of my repertoire, like the songs that I feel like, okay, this could get me hype on stage. Those are the ones I put in there. And then when I'm performing it or practicing it, usually my practice is actually on stage. If I find that there was a place on stage where I was bored during that song or I had an idea to do something and I wasn't immediately able to do it, then that's when I say, well, I need to put a new sound in here. Like, man, I really wanted to do like a bluesy guitar solo on this part, but I didn't have a bluesy guitar solo. All I had was like this really distorted, crunchy guitar that didn't work for what I wanted to do. So then I find that sound that would have serviced what I wanted and then put it in there.
So when you're in the zone, I mean, what you're talking about here is really fascinating because when you're playing, you're totally in the zone. yet you're talking about an experience of reflecting about what worked and what didn't. Is that something that you're mindful of in the moment?
That's a good question.
Or, well, you wanted me to ask good questions,
Yeah, no,
dude.
it's good, it's good.
Or is that something that, like, when you're done, at the end of the day, you find a quiet place and you can dial back into that moment?
There's two answers to that, I think. And the first one that comes to mind is that when I'm in the zone, it's almost like there's a clear distinction between me and I, like my presented self and my true self. My true self is just going about it. And my presented self, the one that is observing my true self, is just like sitting back, taking notes. So, like, I think we all have like these two different versions of ourselves, our true self and then the perceived one. What's interesting about that, I used to think that perceived self just meant what other people perceive, but it's also the one that you perceive too. It's really crazy. But when I'm doing the thing that I'm doing, one of the reasons why it gets me so hype is because the person watching the person doing it, the me watching the I, is like, whoa, that was cool. And the I is just like, not even thinking about it. There's a person like reacting to it too, and that one kind of like feeds like a feedback loop of energy and gets a person hype enough to like put their finger through their gear. That it's like a hype man, just like, wow, keep going, you know. So there is an aspect of it where there is some sort of observational self happening at the same time as the person that's just doing it. But the other answer to that is whenever, you know, I'm not in the flow 100% of the time I'm on stage. There's times where it breaks and I'm out of it. And that is when all of me, presented or not, gets furious and like starts breaking stuff and throwing stuff. But it's those points that I roll out of that keep the flow going. But it's really like easy to have like a memorable location in what I was doing, because at this point this broke because I had to think. I had to think and think my way out of a problem. So that problem is then what stands out later, like, I want to fix that so that next time that doesn't happen.
Yeah, the sound design thing is really interesting because, I mean, what you just said a few minutes ago really speaks to, I think, all of us in this sense of authenticity. And when you're listening to sounds on records and things like that, you're not thinking too much. You're just saying, this is what moves me. And I think ultimately that's, for all of us as developing artists, that's your voice. It's the choices that you make kind of unconsciously about what you're going to use in your stash. As a sound designer, I mean, one of the things I think about a lot, and this is what I tell my students all the time, it's not about the gear you have, it's not about anything except your stash. And that's what's going to make you unique in the business of being a sound designer, is what are the sounds that you have to bring that nobody else has. Can I tell a story?
Yeah.
So years ago, I was doing a lot of work with an animation company, and this is when we started out. And all the sounds that we sampled, we recorded on cassette, Porta Studios. And these kind of like grainy, earthy sounds. And we put them in the sampler and stuff. And that's, you know, we did soundtracks with that. And so we started doing pretty well. So we went out and got some, you know, nice 16-bit libraries. And so we're working with the client, and the client says, what's the matter? Something's wrong here. What did you change? He says, we got this great sound library. It's really awesome. And the guy said, no. I can get anybody in town to get that sound library and use those sounds. But the reason I want to work with you guys is because of those sounds that you have. And it kind of like flipped a switch. It's not about fidelity. It's not about anything else other than those things, those choices you make, which is totally awesome. We were talking the other day about MP3s and this and this and this. And it really is, you know, it's the resonance that...
It so doesn't matter.
Yeah.
I used to be such an audiophile. I used to be so anal about getting the purest signal, you know, from here to there. Like, I wanted no distortion, nothing changed from the actual sound to this, and I used to invest a lot of money into that stuff. And now I sample YouTube like crazy. I just do whatever is the quickest thing. Honestly, like, it really doesn't matter. And in fact, if it does matter, sometimes it matters better in your favor than it does not. Like I had a friend of mine who sampled something off of a YouTube video. It was like a preview of a piece of vinyl that he actually ordered, right? And he made a beat out of it. And out of all the beats he was showing me, I was like, ooh, what's this one? He was like, oh yeah, this is one, blah, blah. He's like, yeah, I'm gonna redo it once I get the vinyl. So I was like, why? This is like my favorite one of yours, because all his other ones were so pristine. This one actually had something, like all his other sounds, like he put in, like his bass, his drums, his melodic stuff, they all were so pristine, but then the sample was super like low bit and stuff like that. And it created dimension that his other tracks didn't, because everything was coming from like the same sound source. This one actually had some sort of contrast. And I was like, please don't. Like, this is perfect. This is my favorite one for that reason. And that's what it really comes down to. I blew one of these guys' minds once when because my buddy Swam, he produces so many awesome tracks, and he makes tons of awesome beats. And he started sampling from YouTube, and this guy came up to me. He's like, yeah, I'm working on getting this and this and this and this, and I'm getting a tape machine and this and that. And I was like, oh, that's awesome, man, blah, blah. He's like, yeah, I just really want to make sure that I was like, how many songs have you made in the last 6 months? And he's like, well, you know, I haven't really made any. I was like, let me share something with you. You know Swam, you're a fan of Swam, right? He uses an MPC and a horrible connection of internet with a really old computer and samples YouTube exclusive. He's like, seriously? And he's made, you know, more tracks in a day than you have in the last year, you know? So, I mean, that stuff doesn't really matter. There's a lot more that matters. I think I used to get distracted by these things, by perfection.
Yeah, too, it goes back to the sense of authenticity of who do you really want to be. And, you know, some of us want to be a librarian. So we have thousands and thousands and thousands of sounds that we've made or whatever. And that's the joy of collection.
Right.
Some of us are collectors. We get lots and lots of instruments, lots of modules, Eurorack modules. So we got all these things, and we'll never have enough hours in our life to actually learn them and use them. So we're Eurorack collectors. But then, you know, the thing that you have to really confront at some point, are you going to be a collector or are you going to be a creator?
Right.
And I think that's the essence to get out of this. And I think that's what a lot of the presenters have been saying all weekend. And that's the thing, I mean, for me, this is one of the things I've really resonated about your work, is that, you know, there's obviously lots and lots and lots of time that goes into this. But you're a creator. You're not a librarian, and you're not an archivist, and you're not a collector.
And it's important to own whatever distinction is you. You know, when you kind of try to be both, you're going to fail at one of them, because ultimately one of them you don't really want. But if you try to convince yourself that you want one of those things, well, then you're inevitably going to think that you're a failure at one of those things. And then that hurts your process, thinking you're a failure and then that's the end. No, if you think you're a failure and that's awesome, that's cool. But if you think that that's a stopping point for you because you're not doing it right or something like that, then that can be dangerous to your art, to your life, whatever. It's being able to embrace those things and say, you know what, I don't like doing this. How awesome. That means that all I'm interested in doing is this. Well, that's really cool. That makes a lot more sense.
Boy, we could talk all day. So here's the thing. So, you know, when you're working with a saxophone, you're creating all sorts of variations on the sound. And it's just like your breath, your body. It's a very physical thing. And it's almost infinite the number of variations you can create with this stable thing. When you're using audio to perform, you have a recording of something. And that recording in and of itself is capturing a frozen sound moment. What do you do to create variations? What do you do to make audio kind of that same type of expressive thing that, you know, any other acoustic instruments? And we had talked about this a little bit when you were getting set up. And I thought this was really fascinating. If you could talk a little bit about that.
Well, let me show some things.
Yeah.
So, here we go. So, That's a good question because that's not something I thought of when I first started, right? So I have some sounds in here. Like, you're talking about creating dynamism with static sounds. So for me, that means it's not too far off from like what a keyboard would do. So I have this sound. And that's a good sound already. It's a dynamic sound. It's probably multi-sampled. Has different velocities that help in playing back. But definitely, you know, like the normal like pitch bending helps. So instead of just playing. Right? So there's that. But then like stuff like drum sounds, you don't want to pitch bend drums. But drum sounds, back when I was helping develop one of the MPCs, I thought about this. I was like, man, I have all these different velocities of drum sounds, like a hi-hat that goes, a hi-hat that goes, a hi-hat that goes, you know? And then I was like, how can I make it, well, I just used to play them on different pads, like that. But then I was like, that's a lot of pad landscape being used up just to make a dynamic sound for one sound. I asked the creators at Akai, like, can you put a cycle function? So it's like a round robin thing where we could assign like multiple different velocities to one thing, and every time you hit it, it's going to be a different sound. Cool. What's awesome, also a randomized feature, it does the same thing, but like at a random playback. What's really cool about that though is years later, my buddy who also helps as part of the beta team over at Akai for the MPCs, started making these things called cycle kits. And cycle kits are like sounds that he sampled and dynamically had switch. And then I took those cycle kits and I made them available for, well, they're not available yet, but they'll be available soon. I have them. For Ableton.
It's your stash.
Yeah, it's my stash. So that's like, now I got, so every time I hit this, it's a little different. Now this is not a velocity sensitive controller. Like, it's always going to be, you know, full volume. So that's why I put these sounds on there, because they are dynamic on their own. Every time I hit it, it's cycling between like 2 and 4 different sounds. So what's cool about that is I can make like a drum break just from 2 pads. So there's stuff like that. And then there's other sounds where I actually have like, here's one of my secrets, okay? I have sounds that, like I have this, right? Now you hear the different, there's a randomizer in there playing back different velocities. But then when I play back this, leave it. So when I go back and play on top of this, it will allow me to, you know, I don't have to mess around with the hi-hat. I can have something that I can just fall back on if I don't remember the tempo where I'm at. I can just hit this and then I'm cool. I have something to lean on, then I can start. But then I have sounds that are actually not one-shots. So I have, then I have, okay? So now, when I play back, I can use my existing finger drumming skills, but then also cheat to make it sound a lot more dynamic. Right? So that's what makes it sound really realistic. That kit is really realistic because I have actually like diddles and paradiddles and things like that programmed into it. Just different articulations. So And then I can turn all that off and just go back to the one-shots too. But that is something that over the years I used to force myself to do manually. But now that I have all these other things, I'm like, why? Because I could be playing like that over here with one hand where it used to take me two, and then also be playing something over here. I used to think that like that stuff was cheating, but now it's just affording me to challenge myself in newer ways. And why not use the gear to do that? Right? It's there. So again, all these decisions come from whatever keeps me in the zone the most. If I have to like really concentrate, like, you know, I can do that, but how much mental energy is that taking from me? How many fingers is that taking from me to do? You know? All right, so yeah.
These are some pretty amazing strategies, I just got to say. So I got a bunch of questions, but so here's you don't have to answer this. This might be a very personal question.
Bring it.
Okay, so you get Ableton Live. It's got this massive sound library. You ever use a factory preset?
Okay. Sometimes from Ableton Live, especially when I first got it, but you know, I like Omnisphere, and I use all Omnisphere presets. You know, like, I'm a preset guy. I like presets. Even if I tweak it from that point, at least it kind of gives me, and here's the other part about it for me, I like surprise. So when I'm sitting there engineering a sound, I can sometimes like surprise myself, but there's nothing more surprising to me than hitting shuffle on the preset button and then pulling a different one up. You know? That's a lot of what I do.
So this is, it's interesting because we all talk about sound design and everybody's like the gold standard. I get my synthesizer and I burn all the presets and I'm making everything by hand and it's all mine. But I think it's really interesting. I mean, when you talked about collaboration in the first day, I mean, one way you can think about collaborating is if you're going to be performing, if you're going to be producing, you can be collaborating with some of the best sound designers on the planet. You don't have to roll your own all the time. It's just part of that.
Absolutely.
So I got one more question.
Okay.
I got a bunch more, but
Sure.
I'm going to tie this up. So Nick here is a super genius. He's super helpful to you. And if you were to tell these guys, what are some things technically and life-wise that they need to have if they're going to work for you?
Oh.
What are the things that you, and by extension, just about any other high-level artist?
That's a really good question.
What are the things that these guys have to learn to get Nick knocked out of his job?
Well,
Nick, you can go away for a minute.
I have a ritual. You have to fight my last assistant, and whoever wins. No. Really what it comes down to is skill is like not even secondary. It might be like the fourth or fifth thing. It really depends on your character. And I'll tell you a quick story, because in the ranks of working with Miss Lauryn Hill, I moved up really quick. Again, she liked me so much she put 20 million different hats on me. But she liked me because I knew how to communicate, and I was direct with her, and I knew what she meant when she was being direct. Like, there's so many people that would cower around her. You know, like, I remember one time this guitar player was playing something, and she kept asking for this one thing, and he didn't understand, so he was just like, and she was like, no, wait, what was that? What was that? Say it. She said, say it. And I was like, that's awesome. I was just sitting there like, yeah, that's cool. Because I've lived with my group for the last 16 years or something like that. And we've gone through all of that. And these are really powerful people. They're leaders. And they would not let me get away with stuff like that. I learned how to communicate with really powerful people. And I learned that by them having my interest in mind because they were interested in my voice. Right? A lot of this comes from living and working with them. These are amazing people. You know, this isn't just something I come up with myself. Like, I could have easily been in a place where I was down on my luck and things like that and consider certain things, and I have. But I weighed it out, and these people helped me weigh it out and get through it to a point where I'm like, I understand what that's for. So when I came into the fold with her business and her operation, I was that person already. I had done the work by myself. I had done the work by myself so that when I was able to be there, I was able to bring my experience having done the work to the table. And I remember the first time she got mad at me, it was pretty much like the last time. It was awesome. She was sitting down. Because at that point I was kind of helping her audition different musicians. And there was this drummer, and he was having a really hard time because like there was a lot of pressure to learn in such a short amount of time. And she was like, how's he doing? Is everything all right? And I was like, he's okay. And I kept like skirting around the issue, and she got really mad. She's like, DiViNCi, I know you're a nice guy, but I need you to tell me if he sucks, tell me he sucks. Like if this, that, the other thing. Like I don't need nice. I need the truth, you know? And as soon as she started yelling, she didn't really yell. She was just being really direct. As soon as she got into that place, I got on my knee and I'm like, so you guys can see, I was on my knee and I was like, And I was like trying not to smile, right? Because it reminded me of when she did this to the guitarist the other day. And that's what I want to see in the world. Like personally, I want to see being able to be direct with any of you and just like you feel it. You don't take it personal. Like I can say what the truth is and you get it. And if you disagree, you yell back at me. I want that because that's what's in everyone's best interest. So when I saw that, I was like, absolutely, absolutely. And then I stood up and I was like, I just want you to know, the reason I was hesitant to say it was because he's under so much pressure, I don't feel like I've been able to see his true skill yet. I feel like I'm seeing his nervous self. I'm not seeing his actual self. That's why I gave you a kind of flip-floppy answer, but I'm sorry I didn't give that in the first place more direct, because I wasn't exactly sure until you extracted it out of me right now. But I want you to know what you just did, that got me so hyped. That's what I want to see in communication. That's what I want to see. And she just started laughing. Just like you guys, she was like, DiViNCi, you're crazy. You know, like, and at that point though, like there was an understanding, like we understood each other. I was like, please don't ever not feel comfortable that you can do that to me. Please. And that's what I liked about Nick. Nick came through at a point where I had just gotten done having like 5 interns 3 times a week or 3 to 5 times a week every day in my office / studio, which is connected to my bedroom, you know, like coming through like a farm of interns all day for like all week. And we got a lot of stuff done. It was awesome. It was cool. But I was done with that because I was doing like other stuff. And what that required for me is required managing a lot of people. By the time he came by, it was like, hey, just want to let you know, like I'm available. I'm going to be out of school in 3 weeks, but I'm available. I want to blah, blah, blah. And I was like, okay, I'll let you know. I'll see when I get up tomorrow, you know, like, and then this, that, the other thing. But you know what? He kept pushing. He kept pushing. And, you know, this guy, man, like, he came and I don't know if you can see under his button up there, but this is how this guy dresses every day. He has matching psychedelic crazy shirts and like coordinates with his socks and his hat and everything like that. And the first time I came by and he's like all hairy and long hair and all that, I was just like, you know, I profiled him. I was like, okay, great, a hippie. But then I was like, okay, you know. He kept coming by, and he was so on top of it. He kept forcing his way in. And I was just like, all right, come on. And he was like really good at what he did. You know, 3 weeks later, he graduated valedictorian of his class. His roommate graduated salutatorian because osmosis, you know what I mean?
Power.
Yeah. And I was just like, man, this guy's awesome. This guy's really killing it. And I kind of correlated it with his age. You know, he was a little older. He's like 30 years old compared to like the 18, 19-year-olds that were coming through before. And there's nothing wrong with where an 18, 19-year-old is. But I just know that there's a lot left to be experienced in most cases. Sometimes you experience a lot early on. And there's certain stuff that you need to do the work of to be able to be ready to be kind of seeing where I'm at, you know, because I've been doing this for a really long time. So I have to like constantly go back and kind of hold your hand here. If you're one that is ready to learn on your own and ask questions and be direct and understand when it's time and I say, hey, let's go, and you don't take it personally, that's awesome. Because I grew up in the kitchen with my mom being a caterer and my dad's in the military and martial artist who beat me up every day for fun, not bad.
We saw the picture.
Yeah. So like I'm good in high stress environments, and I want somebody else who's good at that too. That's just for me. But really the short answer is be in a way that like you're willing to understand that it takes work, and you do the work, and I'm not going to do the work for you. And then that's when you get to a point where I can see eye to eye with you. And Nick's been incredible, so much so that he inspired a lot of he's a big reason I'm here right now, because he provided me the help to be able to be like, you know what? Now that you have somebody that can actually help in this way, you know those things that were on your queue of things to do? You can actually start approaching those because now you have an extra set of hands that's in line with your vision, that understands it, and we can work as a team. So I call him my assistant, but he's really my colleague, you know, because when it comes down to it, we go at this together. And it was so much so that a week after he graduated, I was so inspired by what he was doing. Miss Hill called me up. She was like, hey, do you want to come out on tour with me and Nas? Because we're doing this big tour. And I was like, that sounds awesome, but I'd rather be looking at my daughter every day, you know? And then the next question that always came up, because I still work with her, but I do a lot more remotely, was, well, who do you know that can do it instead? And I thought, to give my usual answer, which was like, I don't really know anyone. Because I know what she requires as far as like character. Because she doesn't care if you're a virtuoso, she wants character first. Because then you can shape the skill, but character, you got to learn that on your own. But for the first time in a long time, when she asked me, who else do you know that you can recommend, Nick came to mind. And I called Nick up and I was like, Nick, can you do this? And he was like, I've never done anything like that. I just graduated school a couple days ago. And I was like, you can do it. And I told Miss Hill, and a week after graduating from school, he was on the road with Nas and Lauryn Hill. And that's when I was like, all right, cool. Let's keep going. Let's keep doing this. So yeah, it takes that. And another note on saying no, please understand that when you define your own voice, it's really important to understand when you don't want to do something. Yes, there's points in your life, in your career, where you just say yes without even thinking. But once you get to a certain point, understand that what you want is more valuable than what you're being offered, right? And I want to share this quick little story about when I was going on tour with Miss Hill the first time I ever said no. Because when I first got in there, all I wanted to do was say yes to everything and be in a way that no one else had been for her. But there was one day where she wanted to call a surprise rehearsal before we went overseas for a couple months. And we had been rehearsing so hard that it didn't make any sense to me. And when management called up, I was really compelled to say no, because I had just went back to Pennsylvania to visit with my family. And then I went and I called up Doug Wimbish from Living Color. He's like a really good friend of mine. He's a guy that really co-signed me when I came in to work with Miss Hill, where everyone else was like, oh man, we got a new guy. He was the one guy that was like, stick with me, I'll take care of you. And he really did. And we became really good friends. And we were both like, nah, we got to say no. This is not going to help. And I remember saying, this is going to be the first time I've said no, but I got to do it. Doesn't feel right. Doesn't feel right. Doesn't feel like it's going to help. It wasn't about me. It doesn't feel like it's going to help anybody. It feels like everyone wants to have some break before we go out. And morale is more important than skill at this point and how practiced we are. And furthermore, there comes a point where you can practice too much. So I called him back up and I said, I can't do it. Me and Doug can't do it. And if me and Doug can't do it, it wasn't happening. So that happened. The next night, I enjoyed my day off, went and visited my grandparents, my grandmother and grandfather. And then I went off. We went off, we played some shows, A couple days in, we were in Amsterdam, and then I got a phone call that night after the show, and my grandfather was in the hospital. And not too long after that, that night, he passed away. And I was so happy I said no. You know what I mean? I love my grandfather. And if I would have went against my feeling of saying yes or saying no and said, yeah, I'll be there, I wouldn't have been able to see my grandfather before I left. And I had no idea he was going to pass away, right? You know what would have happened if that happened? I would have beat myself up. I would have started to resent Miss Hill and her whole operation and this gift of a job that I had. And I would have started to hate what I did. And then it would eventually made me stop early doing what I was loving to do and what brought me really far. And possibly even tainted the friendship I have with Miss Hill. But because I said no, because I listened to myself, none of that happened. And I got to see my grandfather. And when it came time to go to his funeral and everything, I was able to do that. And there was no regret. And the funeral was beautiful. And it just was a great lesson for me. That what is being said to you from here is way more important than what you could hear from anybody else.
Wow. Can I ask you one more question?
Yeah, please.
So I think it's the same question that everybody here might want to ask you at this point. Will you play something else for us?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
I have a question or something to let you guys know. If you haven't gotten my business card, please at the end come get one from me or Nick. And even if you have, come shake my hand or give me dap or whatever on the way out. If you have questions, look, I run a little coaching service I call Studio Sensei. I'd love to create, I'll give every single one in here a free session, to have a one-on-one. I know that's a lot of people, and it'll take some time, but please take me up on it. I'm interested in being in touch with you guys, especially if there's questions that you had that you weren't happy with the answer with or whatever. Let me know, all right? Sound good? Yeah. And if you have a question at the end, feel free to come up and ask. All right, so I'm going to start with, this one's fun. Where are we at? I'm not hearing the monitor.
A million days in your arms and never in yours. I just don't wanna stop. much, never too 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 much.
All right, give it up. I think the beast is free.
All right.
All right, I think the beast has been freed. Thank you, DiViNCi. Awesome. So we have a couple quick points of business. The first thing we have to do right now is what we call the family portrait, which means all of you from there come up here and let's see if we all get around and get a picture with DiViNCi. After this, what we'd like you to do is we have a survey. We'd like to hear what you think about this event, and then we have diplomas for you. So we have official documentation for you.